5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's go. Welcome to Diary of a Kidney Warrior podcast in partnership with Kidney Care UK, sharing faith, knowledge, hope, and love.
Hi, and welcome to Diary of a Kidney Warrior podcast. Today, we celebrate 4 years of Diary of a Kidney Warrior podcast. Today is our bonus extra special audio and visual episode. And today I'm joined by my co-host, uncle of the podcast, and my kidney brother, Jerome Espy, all the way from Michigan, America. How you doing, Jerome?
I am doing so well, and I'm so honored to be here with you to celebrate 4 years of Diary of a Kidney Warrior podcast. And it is just an amazing time. Now, when you started out, would you have thought that you would have gotten to 4 years?
No, to be honest, no. I didn't know like how it would be. You know, you hope that when you start something that people will receive it well, but you just never know if that's going to be the case. Especially because of the change in my health as well. So no, I didn't know, or I hoped that I would, but to be here is definitely an honor and definitely a surprise.
Yeah, and it's just amazing what you've done so far. So it's such an honor to be with you, as I kind of said before. But it's been quite a journey for you. And the great thing about today is that we're taking questions from all over the internet, social media, around the world, and you haven't read these questions, right? This is something that's almost fresh for you, right?
Yeah, I mean, when I received them, I skimmed them to see whether it was a question and who sent it, but I didn't want to have like prepared answers. I really want it to be authentic and to answer, um, yeah, genuinely, just really, I didn't want to be prepared and have like a script of answered. I wanted you to hear from my heart. So I really tried skim it, but try not to read it too much. And then I, sent them off to you so that I,
Sure.
I wouldn't be focused on them for too long.
Yeah, that's great. So let's jump in, Dee. So this is a question from Kev from Instagram. Um, Wants to know what helps you stay motivated and positive. You talked about the journey that you've come through since you first started this. When you started this podcast, you weren't on dialysis,
No,
but things have changed. So I'll say this one more time. What helps you stay positive and motivated?
there's different things that help me stay positive and motivated. The first I would say is God, always, always God. But also I am blessed to have very supportive people around me. I have my kidney family, my actual, blood relatives, friends, um, church brethren. I have a very good network of support, and I would say that my children are a significant motivator for myself. Like if it was just me that I had to stay positive for, I don't think that would be enough for me. Like my children have given me a level of strength to keep going. Um, but also having the podcast, um, being able to speak with different people, the different kidney warriors, the health professionals, when people share their stories and their experiences and what they've been through, sometimes like I'm sitting there thinking, I haven't been through anything compared to this person who's sharing their story with me. And I think it helps to have perspective. Sometimes when you're in a situation and it seems like the worst thing that could possibly happen to you, but when you speak with somebody and hear what they've been through, and you realize actually um, things could be worse. And so I think that staying positive is something that I really fight hard to do. I'm not necessarily by nature the most positive person. That might sound quite quite surprising to some people, but being positive is something I I make the effort and choice to do. I can be quite pessimistic by nature, but it has been, I say the motto every time I end the podcast, I choose to live. And I think that choice, and I use that word deliberately, that choice to choose to live is what helps me remain positive.
Yeah, that's such a powerful phrase, and I think God gave that to you. I'll say that, and you choose to live, and you are exemplifying that in everything that you do here. I've got a question here. You've done so many podcasts now, and had so many great topics and so many great guests. Sabrina from TikTok has an interesting question. What is
Okay.
your favorite podcast episode?
Wow. You see, that's a really difficult question for me to answer because I genuinely love every episode that I've recorded. Every single episode that I've recorded, I have learned something that has helped me personally. And I know that through the feedback that I've got from people, that it's helped other people as well.
Hmm.
But I have to say, and it's not just because I'm talking to you, but I have to say, it was my first ever episode, first ever interview. So I'd have to say episode 2 with Jerome SB would
Oh,
have to be my favorite episode because it's my first interview. I learned so much from you during that process. Um, Recording the first 3 episodes that I recorded of the podcast, I had to re-record all 3 of them for different reasons.
mhm.
One, our episode, there was notifications going off, email notifications going off in the interview. The other one, they had the device in the background, and then the other one I deleted completely by accident. So we had to re-record the whole thing. So it was definitely a learning curve. Everything that I've learned in terms of interviewing has been by doing the podcast. But yeah, starting at the beginning, I would have to say my favorite episode is with episode 2.
I'm blushing. You can't tell because I'm a dark skinned. I am blushing, but I'm so honored and thank you for that. Sabrina from TikTok has another question, so I wanted to slide this one in here too. If you could
Okay.
shout out one thing to the world, what would it be?
Gosh. One thing to the world. I think that there's a God-shaped void and hole in everyone's life, and it doesn't matter what you try and fill it with, only he can fill it.
Mm-hmm. That's a great answer. And had my own journey, and I leaned heavily on the Word of God and on God and my relationship with Him, and family too. So I agree with everything that you've said, and I just personally am a fan of your of Diary of a Kidney Warrior podcast. One more question from Sabrina. I thought this was a good one. Who do you fangirl over? Who do you fangirl over?
Who do I fangirl over? Oh my gosh. Um, that list would be very, very long. But if I was to narrow it down, like if you like, oh gosh, not just these people, but I have to nail it down to some. So basically, I would say Denzel Washington, Denzel. I think he's an incredibly talented actor. Um, the way he treats his wife, he's got so much respect for his wife. He makes opportunities for other actors by paying off their college tuition fees. There's just so much that he does in terms of the way he carries himself and the movies that he does and the choices that he's made in those movies. So yeah, I would say Denzel Washington and also Karen Clark Sheard.
Mm,
She's an amazing gospel singer. She sings one of my favorite songs of all time, and that's Jesus is a Love Song. And there's a note
yeah.
that holds in that song that just inspired me when I was singing to hold elongated notes. But she's an amazing singer and has inspired a lot of singers, famous singers, that you hear now. So the list is way, way longer than this, but I have to narrow it down. And if I was way younger, I would say John Boyega, but I'm not younger. But he's my sweetheart. I love John Boyega.
Okay.
So yeah. But there's
That's
way more people, but I know I have to keep it short.
yes, yes. Interesting fact. My wife and I go to her nephew's church, Jay Moss. So we go to his church.
Okay.
Shout out to our pastor, Jay Moss. But Venetia from TikTok has a question here. How do you cope with dialysis when traveling? How do you cope with dialysis when traveling?
Well, I haven't really. I recently did go away for a few days, but I left after having dialysis and then came back in time for the next session. So I haven't actually done dialysis while traveling. So I kind of avoided having to. So I haven't been away long enough to have to do it.
Okay. Okay. Chudney from TikTok. A lot of questions from TikTok today.
Yeah.
What advice would you give a young person battling with kidney disease to keep them pushing forward?
For a young person, I would remind them that despite having kidney disease, they are still young. They've still got their whole life ahead of them. That kidney disease is not just a death sentence. And I would encourage them to look for the cans rather than they can't. So focusing on what is in their power to do rather than what they're unable to do. And I think that as a young person, still pursue your dreams, still go after the things that you love. Don't give up. I mean, it might be that you have to do things differently than you would have before, but don't give up on your dreams. Keep dreaming, keep going for it. You've you're young, you've got your whole life ahead of you. Keep going.
That's amazing advice. Just keep going. I always joke and tell people every day I wake up is a good day. Every day I wake up is a good day. So that's great advice.
Absolutely.
This is a question from one of the viewers from Rachel and from TikTok. What has becoming a kidney warrior taught you that is positive or not so positive or even negative?
Mm. Um, I I think one of the first things that being a kidney warrior taught me was that I'm loved.
Mm,
And when I when I was when this for here we go. When this journey first started for me, at that time I kind of was wrestling with feeling that I wasn't loved and I wasn't appreciated. And so when I was in the hospital and when I first went into the hospital, I didn't really want people to know. I didn't really tell people because I expected that I wasn't going to be in the hospital for very long. And it was a few weeks in, and a friend of mine happened to be texting me. And when I told her I was in the hospital, she was like, "Oh my gosh, why didn't you tell me?" Like t telling me off kind of thing. And I was like, "Oh my gosh." And then I started letting people know that I was in the hospital. And basically, then people started visiting me. And, there was a lot of support from my colleagues at work that shout out to Riverside family. And basically it was like the amount of messages that I got, the amount of cards and gifts and visits, and people came like more than once to see me. And the hospital I was staying in was the other side of Birmingham. It was out of the way for the majority of people that came to see me. So they were making an effort to come to see me. And when I counted, it was over 60 odd people that
Mm,
came to visit me while I was in the hospital. And like I said, many of them came more than once. And so I was surrounded by love, and like that nagging feeling that used to bother me, like no one cared. Well, that dissipated because I had a clear demonstration of love, support, compassion for my situation. And so I would say that that is the first thing that I learned when I became a kidney warrior, is that I am loved. Um,
mm, mhm. Yeah, it's awesome.
and
So many people don't have that, and so it's great that you're able to find that, get a lot of support. It's amazing.
and the flip side of that was the negative but still positive thing was I also learned who didn't. So there were people who I had no expectation of that were there, and people who I had expectation of that weren't there. So, but I see it as a gift. Even though it's a negative thing to find out, it's still a positive thing because then I see who the genuine people in my life are rather than the people who say they will be there but weren't there. So I would say that those two were the first things that I learned being a kidney warrior.
Mm. We're going to jump around a little bit, and this is from dialysis. It's Roxana from dialysis. What is the worst experience you've had, and what is the best experience that you've had during dialysis?
Worst experience, that's an easy one. I had a major crash while I was on dialysis, and it was frightening. And when I say a crash, I mean a sudden and very significant drop in my blood pressure. It was really frightening. I was disorientated. I like was grabbing the staff, telling him, "Help me," kind of thing. I would say easily that was the worst experience I had on dialysis, and the best experience, um, and and I would add also to that the first session of dialysis, hemodialysis, I would say, is one of my worst experiences because it was something that I never ever wanted to need. The best experience, um, I think was further on when I started doing the treatment and realized how much of the fluid that the the dialysis process was taking off my body. Um, PD unfortunately did wasn't successful for me, and so I it looked like I was gaining weight, but actually it was fluid retention, and so after one session I was like 4 pounds lighter. That's one session, and
Mm-hmm.
more has come off since. But I would say when I saw that, I was like, oh, maybe HD isn't that bad after all.
Mm-hmm. Amina from Instagram has an interesting question that kind of ties into what you just said loosely. Do you have fluid restrictions? And if so, how do you tackle that?
I do have fluid restrictions. Um, and that was very difficult for me to come to terms with because I've always been anyone that knows me, I'm the one drinking water. And
Mm,
so I used to drink at least 2 liters of water per day. Um, and to not be able to do that is definitely has been a challenge. I have to state a disclaimer before I say anything further. If you do not have an issue with potassium, then let me say that again. If you don't have an issue with potassium, then I would recommend coconut water because it is very hydrating. So you get more hydration for less. So if you've got a fluid restriction like myself, coconut water is great if you don't have an issue with potassium. And I don't want anyone, going ahead and drinking because for some people they cannot, but potassium isn't an issue for me personally. So I'm able to drink coconut water, but I'd say that is one of the ways that I manage not being able to drink as much.
Hmm. And of course, goes without saying that neither Dee nor I are medical experts,
Yes.
but that is great advice, though. That is great advice. I know after my transplant, the first thing when I woke up was like, bring me water. Bring me this much water. Bring me water now. That's right. Amina from Instagram has another question, so I wanted to get this to here too.
Okay.
Do you find food restrictions challenging when eating out and with family gatherings?
Um, no, not really. I think that um I I made the decision quite early on. When I say quite early on, I made the decision when I realized that kidney disease was part of my life for life. I made the decision to change my eating from then. So when I go out, it's just a continuation of that. And fortunately, there's a lot more vegetarian and vegan options on the menu. I'm not vegan, but vegan food is a great way of avoiding like high levels of protein if you're on a protein restriction. So yeah, no, the answer is no. I'm okay. Sorry.
Great. Sharon from TikTok has a interesting question because I know we've had a lot of discussions, and I went through this when I was on dialysis as well, and through end-stage renal disease. Um, what advice would you give someone who is feeling despair that is on the waiting list for a kidney? That's Sharon from TikTok. I know you're waiting as well yourself, but what
Yeah.
advice would you give someone who is feeling despair that is on the waiting list for a kidney?
I think it goes back to what I said earlier about focusing on what is in your power to do. And there's an expression that says a watched pot doesn't boil. Like if you keep focusing on the weight, then you'll never be in the moment that you are and enjoy life that as it is as you're going through your everyday life. My what I would say to somebody is focus on the good things in your life, focus on what is in your power to do. This time that you have, think of it as a gift to get your life in order, get your life ready, get things done, see what you can achieve in the meantime. There's unfortunately nothing that you can do about the weight itself. All you can do is focus on you, focus on your mental health, focus on being happy, focus on your family, your friends, your job, all the things in your life that bring you joy. Focus on that.
Mm, that's good. You talked about the 60 plus people that kind of rallied around you when you were in the hospital. Rachel from TikTok has another question. So, as a kidney warrior, what is the best way that family and friends can support you?
I think by educating themselves, I think it can become really grating after a while when people are asking you the same basic questions. Um,
Mm,
you know, is it both kidneys that have failed? I think we did record an episode about what not to say to somebody
mm,
with a chronic illness that actually might be a good lesson for people to listen to, what not to say to people who have a chronic illness. Learning the basics of kidney disease, episode 3 covers that. What is kidney disease? Um, I think that when you have a basic understanding, then that will shape how you are around your loved one, understanding that they may be extremely tired, understanding that they might make plans with you and have to cancel at the last minute because they're not feeling well. Understanding that simple tasks that they used to do easily before, they might not be able to do them now, understanding that physically they might not be as strong on some days than others, understanding that they might not be able to eat the same things. It's not sensitive to someone who's on whatever restriction in their eating and saying, oh, it doesn't matter, just if you have one or anything to that effect. They're eating that way to save their own life, literally. So for me, not undermining their efforts to maintain their health, show empathy and understanding to what they're going through. You know, if you don't have to eat certain things in front of them or drink certain things in front of them, don't. Because it might be really difficult for them to see you eating the type of things they used to enjoy eating and can no longer eat. So I would say, number one, educate yourself as much as possible and take their lead. Don't just assume that they want certain things. Ask, but also when you see certain things, step in and support them.
That's awesome. I want to remind everyone that this is a special celebratory episode of Diary of a Kidney Warrior podcast. And 4 years in, 4 years in. And so just an amazing, amazing celebration. Jonathan from TikTok. And just as a reminder, too, that we're taking questions from all over the internet, TikTok, Instagram, and different places. People that want to know more about your journey. And the hope is that your journey is going to inspire and encourage someone else. But Jonathan from TikTok says, what motivates you to continue to create kidney dialysis content and podcasts? So since we've been friends for a while, I know that you've had some challenging times where you maybe didn't want to always do it as fervently as you do. But what may motivate you to continue to create the kidney disease content in the podcast?
I would say the listeners. That's my number one motivation. When I get a message from somebody thanking me for what I do in terms of kidney advocacy and the podcast, that motivates me to keep going. Like literally, there's sometimes when I'm X hours into editing and sorting out the podcast, I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore, and whatever, whatever. I might be having a bad day, but I'm always brought back to the fact that of why I started the podcast. And like I said, when messages come through saying, this episode really helped me, really encouraged me, then that shows me that there is a need for this, that there's people out there for whom this information is the only way that they're getting this information. They might not be understanding the information that's shared to them by their health professionals. And so the health professionals on the podcast are filling that gap in terms of knowledge for them. So I feel like it's an important work, and for as long as I have the strength to do it, I will keep going.
Awesome. Nat and Jack from Instagram have a question that's a little bit longer and has a couple of elements. So let me know if you need me to repeat it. But
Okay.
being a partner of a sickle cell and kidney warrior, I would like to know how it can affect your partner or family. How do they cope or how do they help? And what do you require of them? What expectations do you have of them? And then sometimes it's hard to know what to do other than just be there.
Right. I think this comes down to the age of the family members that you're talking about. In terms of my family, my children, I had my children long before I became a kidney warrior, and my children are 20 and 21 now. Um, but for the 6 years that I've been on this kidney warrior journey, the way that I coped with it was um I gave them a number of 1 to 10. So when they asked me how I am, I gave them a number rather than going into detail because I didn't want them worrying. I didn't want them having that pressure or expectation on their shoulders as my children. I always said to my children, your job is to be a child and go to school and learn and enjoy life. I didn't want to put any kind of like pressure on them in that way. And the number kind of gave them an indication of where I was at in terms of feeling tired or things being really difficult. So they knew to give me space or help me with certain things around the house. So I don't know if that method would help anybody else out there, but that is what I did. And to be honest with you, I don't and didn't talk about my kidney disease so much with my family. I talked with my kidney family because for me, um, who feels it knows it. I just felt like when you talk to people who don't have kidney disease, they don't understand it in the way of somebody who's going through it. So I would kind of keep the conversations light with my family and then with my kidney family go into more detail. I think that going back to the point that I made, if people really want to support their family member, it is about educating themselves, learn as much as you can so that you can understand the different challenges that your family member has. I touched on that earlier, but also recognizing that if they're on prednisolone or any other kind of steroid treatment, this might, they call it roid rage. This might mean that they're irritable. Um, they might feel very self-conscious about the change in their physical appearance. And, some people are affected with weight gain or acne or different things. Also, the way that they see themselves, their identity may change significantly. They might have been the main breadwinner of the home and can no longer work in the same way. And so they're working less hours and they might not see themselves in, as being as strong as they used to be. So recognizing that this your family member is going through a lot physically, emotionally, and if it's a case of maybe going counseling with them, like family counseling, things that you can talk in a safe space, having facilitated conversations. I strongly believe in counseling, so I highly recommend family sessions where you can talk openly and have that in a safe space.
Mhm. How does that show up with the number system that you've implemented? Do you wake up in the morning and give the family a number, or do they have to kind of wait and kind of read you first, and then you say, okay, today I'm at a 2, or today I'm at a 7?
It
How do
was
you navigate?
it was more if my children asked me, "How are you today?" I would give them a number. It was more when they asked me the question rather than me just volunteering.
Hmm. Okay,
Yeah.
very good. Philomena from Dialysis asks, if you could change one thing about dialysis, what would it be?
Oh, wow. It would be the size of the machines. Like I've seen the heart patients have like a um that not all, but there's this backpack that some of them have. Um, if we could have a dialysis machine that was like a backpack that you had on your shoulder and that you could just carry on with your day, but still be doing dialysis, that would be the one thing that I would change about dialysis.
Make it more portable? Would you
Yeah.
say?
Yeah, making it
Yeah.
more portable.
So you're not tied to the chair so much. Okay, I
That's
got
right.
you. Philomena has another question. So, what other support would you like to be included for kidney patients?
I think the first and foremost, I know that in some units it is available, but unfortunately not in every unit. I really would love for every single kidney patient to have access to counseling from a renal psychologist. That's something I feel mental health is something I feel really, really, really passionate about. And so for me, that support should be there for every single kidney patient at every single unit. I also think that every single kidney patient should have access to renal social workers or advocate that can help in terms of what benefits or additional support that are available. so that people are not suffering in silence and not knowing actually what help and support is out there. So I'd say those would be the top two things.
Hmm. Alan's got a question. He's from dialysis here. What is the thing you most regret, if there's anything that you regret, as a kidney patient, and that you told yourself you wouldn't do again?
The thing I regret the most was early on in my kidney warrior journey. I think it's because I've genuinely thought I was going to get better. So it was like this was gonna go away and I would go back to my life as it was. And so yeah, not giving free advertisement here. So there's a particular restaurant that has like a breakfast deal where you can have as much bacon and
Mm-hmm.
sausage, eggs, and all these high protein. Um, there's loads of other stuff on the menu that you can have. And basically, when I came out of the hospital, I was going and I was having these high protein meals. And when I look back on that, I think how much damage was I doing to my kidneys that were so fragile and had really plummeted during my time in the hospital. So my number one regret is not researching immediately about kidneys and then making changes to my diet and everyday life straight away.
Is
And
this was this when you before you actually started dialysis, or when you were first
this is
talked to
when,
by your physicians?
yeah, this is when I left, was discharged from the hospital. So long before dialysis, this was like when my journey literally just started.
Mm-hmm. I know you're a avid. Anybody that follows Lee, you can tell that she's a badminton player. This is a question for me.
Okay.
How important how important is exercise in your journey?
Oh gosh. Exercise was a massive part of my life. I know probably wouldn't think of that looking at me now, but I used to train 4 times a week. I was doing boxing, circuit training, jogging, and weights. And I was really passionate about that. And I think that by playing badminton, it's kind of kept that element of me and my identity. And I'm fully aware that in terms of maintaining your health, looking after your kidneys, you have to take care of your blood pressure. And so exercise is a way of helping with that. So, but also not only the physical aspect of exercise, but also the social aspect of exercise, where I've got my badminton family, shout out to my badminton club family, which is also an important part as well. So it's the physical element of exercise, but also the social element of exercise is beneficial, and both of which are good for your kidneys.
Mm. Risto from TikTok asked a question here. They put it in the form of kind of something that they have gone through. I find it overwhelming at times and struggle with specific daily activities because the memory of how I like to do things hurts so much. Did you experience that, or you have any advice for Risto?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, going back to what I said about I used to train 4 times a week. And so I desperately tried to hold on to that. And so I put a lot of pressure on myself to train 4 times a week, even though I was a kidney warrior. And when I had to come to terms with the fact that this level of pressure for me was not good for me, either emotionally or physically. And for me, it was like a defeat. It was like kidney disease has stolen something else from me. But I had to change my mindset around that and be like, do you know what? Consistency is more important than like doing 4 times a week and burning yourself out and damaging yourself. It's healthier to be consistently training 1 time once a week, doing a form of exercise that you really love and enjoy, than trying to kill yourself out to do more and end up setting yourself up for failure and end up doing more damage than good. And so I say that to say this, that the way that you think about whatever it is in your life makes all the difference. So rather than saying, I can't do this, I can't do that, say, well, I can do this, and this is my goal for the day. So it's like you set yourself one goal of the day, and that is so much easier to achieve than so many, 10 or 15 tasks, because then you will always feel like you're not achieving. But if you set short, a low number of tasks and goals for you to do, that is achievable. And then you can still maintain that feeling of accomplishment and success because you are achieving something.
So you kind of touched on something around mental health. So I want to go back to Rachel from TikTok. She's got a question here. Since you started this journey, what impact has becoming a kidney warrior had on your mental health? And how do you manage that impact on your mental health?
It's definitely been challenging. Like it's hard to, you know, to stay, it's hard to be positive all the time. And so I don't put that pressure on myself to be positive all the time. How I manage my mental health is when I need to cry, I cry. I don't try and be like this, you know, person who doesn't have feelings. I don't, the superhuman person. I'm not. I'm human. I acknowledge my own limitations and my own humanity. And there's a saying that says, tears are a language that God understands. Sometimes I'm just crying, and that just helps release what I'm going through. I tap into my network of friends and family and support. So when I'm going through something, I speak about it. I I pray. I also see a counselor, and do. I'm a strong believer that counseling is beneficial with a qualified counselor. So it's kind of a mixture of different things. I'm also a very creative person. So I sing, I songwrite, I write poetry, and I find that very cathartic. So I think that um, at a young age, somebody that I know had a very, 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 very serious mental health breakdown. And that showed me at a very young age the importance of mental health. So for me, I just say to myself, okay, I cry and I have that time to feel those feelings, and then I have to arise. I can't stay there. And I think that's the key for me. I allow myself to feel those feelings, whatever the feelings are, but then I have to arise.
There's a question here from Deep from Instagram. This is another long one, so we got to listen here. But with the ever increasing chronic kidney disease patients all over the globe, the infrastructure and research and development in the field of nephrology is not keeping pace with new patients coming in. There are very few institutions working for a better tomorrow for people like us. Research on artificial wearable kidney and bionic kidneys is done only by a very few number of universities and research facilities. How should we raise our voice to governments of developed countries so that more set up programs like this, that they're opened and finding new solutions to help those that are on dialysis and in need of transplantation, especially because of the need, because of poverty, um, all kinds of issues that pop up with that.
I think it comes down to our local, here in the UK, your local MPs writing to your local MPs. At the end of the day, their job is to serve the community. And so, as the kidney community, we are part of their community. Um, Simple things of posts on social media, having conversations with people. I say to people, I can turn any conversation into a conversation about kidneys. You say
Mm-hmm.
any word, and somehow I can bring it back to kidneys. Like that's how committed I am to sharing about kidney disease. But especially when it comes to local election time, um, sad to say, but ultimately they're always looking for an opportunity to promote themselves. So, okay, you want to promote yourself, MP. Here's an issue that needs to be addressed. So yeah, so definitely lobbying your local MPs, and the wider MPs, the national MPs as well. Um, Also getting behind charities like Kidney Care UK, who are instrumental in helping policy changes for kidney patients nationwide as well. So lending your support to charities as well makes a difference. So yeah.
Sabrina from TikTok has an interesting question. How do you come up with the topics to talk about on Diary of a Kidney Warrior podcast?
Comes from different ways. Like I've done like so lives on social media where I've asked people what topics would you like me to talk about, and then I've written down all the suggestions and literally made my way through the suggestions. I say at the beginning of every episode, if you have any ideas or of topics you'd like me to cover, please get in touch with me. And people have done so. They've emailed me or inboxed me on social media with ideas for topics. Sometimes well, a lot of the topics have come from my own personal experience. So, for example, the episode that I did on um, podiatry and CKD was born out of a problem I had with my feet. And I didn't realize that having kidney disease would lead to this issue with my feet. And so I thought, well, okay, this is important for people to know so they can avoid going through the pain and discomfort that I went through, not realizing that this could be a direct after effect of having CKD. Um, like I mentioned before, I'm a really creative person, so I just get ideas and I'm like, oh, this will be good. Sometimes I'm having a conversation and I'm like, that would be a great podcast. Sometimes when I interview a guest, during that interview comes a topic that for another interview. So the ideas come from all different ways, or I'm on social media. I saw a post by Judy, and I thought, wow, that would be make a great podcast. So I inboxed her and said, do you mind if I did a podcast on that? And she was like, great. And I interviewed her on the podcast. So yeah, just lots of different ways that come about, and or sometimes like I said, I'll be watching something or doing something or listening to something and think, great idea for the podcast. So yeah, it comes from different ways, but like I said, the listeners have sent in their ideas as well, so that's been a great source of inspiration.
Rachel, back to Rachel from TikTok. You've gotten some really great questions. So, uh, personally, I want to say thank you to all of the followers of Diary of a Kidney Warrior podcast. You all are awesome. It's an awesome community, and it's very helpful for anyone kind of going through this process. But Rachel from TikTok asks, What are your goals and dreams for yourself and the podcast? And how can your supporters help you to achieve those goals?
My my dream and goal for myself is really for Diary of a Kidney Warrior podcast to reach a bigger and wider audience, to reach more people, to educate more people, to give hope to more people. Um, I think that in terms of what the followers and the listeners of the podcast can do to help with that is by sharing the podcast, obviously, subscribing to the podcast, but also podcasts work on algorithms, and algorithms like traffic. So if you comment on the episodes, give feedback on the episode, that drives the algorithm, and then that puts the podcast in front of more people. I always say to people that this is information that can potentially save lives. So even if an episode isn't relevant to you personally, share it with somebody who you think it might help. For example, if you have a family member who has high blood pressure or diabetes, sharing those episodes. If you know somebody who whatever is relevant for that individual, saying, oh, this might help you by sharing the podcast, it helps the algorithm. It drives up the opportunity for more people to be exposed to the podcast and listen to the episodes. So, like I said, you could potentially save a life. If people know, for example, what the signs are, like the episode 10 signs you may have kidney disease, like sharing that could literally save someone's life. So, share, subscribe, comment, those are the top things that you could do to support Diary of a Kidney Warrior podcast.
That is so amazing. And I'm all the way over here in the United States, and I have liked, shared, and followed and
You
done
really have.
everything to try
You
to get the
really
word
have.
out. So I know several of the people that I have known that have gone through chronic kidney disease, to end stage renal disease, and to transplant ultimately. They talk about how helpful this podcast is and how much of an impact it has.
Oh, that's
Nikki from TikTok has a question here. How can we get more people to know and understand that there is more than one treatment for kidney disease?
I think it goes back to what I said before about education. People are educating themselves really. Um, I think that a lot of doctors, that's how they're trained, look at the medical model, but there is alternatives that you can use to support that, natural methods to support that. Um, so yeah, I think it goes back to the expression each one teach one. As you learn, share. And that's what I've tried to do with the podcast. As different things have happened in my life, I've shared it on the podcast to hopefully help somebody else either avoid go through what I've been through, or help them to navigate going through it if they are going through it. So yeah, share, educate.
So this is another question from me. How important is your faith as you go through this journey?
Oh gosh, number one, really. Um, number one. Um, I don't know I really I couldn't imagine trying to go through this without God, and having my faith in God and knowing that He's got my back in every single situation that I go through. Even when I let Him down, He never lets me down. So I'd say, yeah, number one.
Awesome. Well, we've gone through quite a few questions here, and
Yeah.
we have. But just personally, I want to say thank you to everyone that contributed questions and everyone that has listened and like, share, follow, encourage people to watch, listen to Diary of a Kidney Warrior podcast. There's so much misinformation, disinformation about this whole process. And so what Dee is doing here is just doing such a great job. And just really as my kidney sister. It's really amazing to be a part of this. And so I'm just blown away at this opportunity and so godly proud of you for all that you're doing. It's really changing lives and shaking up the whole process of how people understand what we go through. It's a small in the relatively of the people on the planet, but mighty group of people, and increasing, unfortunately, that are going through this process. And so, what you're doing is making a phenomenal difference. And so, I just say, keep it up and don't lose hope. Encourage as many people as possible. I do want to leave. I have one more question I want to ask you. How can people that are supporting those that are going through this process, either chronic kidney disease, dialysis, waiting for transplantation, how can they get help? There's the journey of the kidney warrior, but there is the journey of the supporter of the kidney warrior. What advice would you give those people that are supporting people that are going through this process?
I think it goes back to education as well, finding out as much information as you can. But here in the UK, Kidney Care UK, the support that they offer isn't just for the kidney patient, it's also for the family of the kidney patient. So there is support out there that you can tap into by just calling them or emailing them. Also, what I said again about counselling, I really do believe that counselling provides a lot of help for individuals and families. And also, there's helplines, like Samaritans and other helplines that you can call for support as well. Um, so yeah, there is support out there. Don't feel like because you're not the patient that you can't speak out um or reach out for help. There is an episode supporting care partners, so there's a lot of information in that episode that may help you as well. But my advice really is don't suffer in silence. Your mental health is important. You can't be there for your family member if you aren't getting the input that you need as well. You can't give out from an empty cup. You have to be poured into. So don't suffer in silence. Do seek help.
Awesome. Hey, so what's next for Diary of a Kidney Warrior podcast? What's next? What's coming up? What should we look forward to?
What's next for Diary of a Kidney Warrior podcast? Well, I might, you see, I have to be careful because when I say something, I have to follow through it because this is a
You have to
visual
do it.
episode.
You got to be a
You
person
all
of
are
your
seeing
word.
it. Yeah, you have to be a person of your word. I am looking at more visual podcasts as well because I think audio people love the audio only, but people also want to see you as well. So I'm looking at possibly, I'm not making any big statements, but I'm looking at possibly doing more visual podcasts. There's you see, I've got things in the pipeline, but I don't actually. I know this really sounds like a cop out, but I can't actually say what's in the pipeline. But it's all good and it's all exciting, and I know that it will help. I say this a lot, but it's true. I know it will help so many people. But yeah, look out for more visual. This is what I will say. Look out for more visual episodes of the podcast.
Awesome. See, I couldn't leave the interview without asking that. Maybe you give us a tip on, give us a sneak peek behind the curtain to give us some breaking news. Halle Berry on October 4th, right?
Fantastic. But yeah, thank you so much for joining me, Jerome, for interviewing me. It's just weird being asked questions. Like I'm the one usually asking the questions, but I couldn't think of anybody who I'd want to be interviewing me more than yourself. So thank you so much. You're genuinely my kidney brother, and have been there. You see, when I talk about my network, I'm talking about you included in that. There's been many a Zoom call where or WhatsApp call where I'm like, you're like, how are you? And all you see is me crying. You're like, okay, you're not okay. But where you have support, give them support. And I do want to publicly acknowledge you for that because you have been amazing to me. And I love you so much. And thank you for your support. And thank you for joining me today. And I want to say finally to the listeners, because this will be an audio only and audio and visual version of this podcast. I want to thank the listeners and the watchers of this podcast today. Thank you for your ongoing support. You have been with me for 4 years now. And for those who have joined since, I see downloads from everywhere from Australia to Zambia. It's truly an international podcast. I thank you for subscribing. Thank you for downloading. Thank you for your comments. And please, as I said, it really helps the algorithm. If you comment, if you can do a comment on every episode, that would be fantastic if you can do that. But please share the podcast. Please tell your friends, post on social media, get the word out there because literally you could save a life by sharing this information. But again, I want to thank you all and to Kidney Care UK, the team in Kidney Care UK. Thank you for your support, your belief in me. And she hasn't want me to say this publicly, but I do want to acknowledge publicly, Deborah. Thank you for believing in me and for what you've done to help my journey um with kidney disease. There's people that are in your life for a reason and a season, and you were instrumental in that first season of my journey, and I really appreciate you for that. But yeah, I want to end by saying I'm so grateful, so honored to be in this unique position. This is a road that I never ever thought that I would be on, but so much good has come out of it. And I'm so, so grateful. So please continue on with me in this journey. And till next time, take care and choose to live.
Diary of a Kidney Warrior podcast in partnership with Kidney Care UK, sharing faith, knowledge, hope, and love.